everybody. Welcome to another session. So good to be with you again. Not sure how many of you were here this morning. I did a guided imagery session this morning. And for those of you who might have missed that session, you're welcome to go and look on the Thrive Community Facebook page. It's up there. It's a morning meditation that can be done again. It wasn't just a one-time practice. And I'm excited to be here with you this afternoon to speak about some ideas, inspirational ideas about discovering our potential to overcome obstacles, difficulties, struggles, any kind of challenges that we might be experiencing. What can we do to be able to help us, especially in this time of lockdown? And the description of today's talk I called, what are our choices when faced by Egyptians behind us and the sea in front of us? Because this is exactly where we find ourselves at the moment in the Jewish calendar. We're right in the middle of Pesach, a little bit past the middle, and we're going to be at Chag again tomorrow night. And this is really what takes place then, is when the Jewish nation is faced by the sea in front of them and the Egyptians behind them, and they're faced with this huge obstacle. What now? Not only what now, but what next and how? And this is not just questions that they were faced with then, and it is questions that we are faced with all the time. So my background is in logotherapy from the teachings of Dr. Viktor Frankl, and his teachings, which grew out of his experiences in the concentration camps, were all about finding meaning in challenges, how to find meaning in difficult times, how to be able to inspire ourselves to overcome what we are going through right now. And interesting, I've just had a call with someone, and her mother is suffering from COVID-19, desperately ill in hospital. And so interesting to see how when we're able to dig deep, we are able to find meaning in the challenge and the difficulties that we are going through right now. And not only that, what she was finding was previous challenges that she has been through before have actually equipped her for what she is going through now. So very, very interesting. So for those of you who know me, I always love to tell stories. And so today will not be any different from any other time. So there's a story of a king, and he wanted to see what the reaction of the people in his village would be to if he put a massive boulder in the main thoroughfare into the village. So he got his workers and his workers to put this massive boulder in the middle of the night. They put it in the middle of the main thoroughfare into the village. And then he got people just to stand and take note. What is the reaction of the people who are coming into and out of the city? So, and he would see irritation, and he would see the king doesn't care about us, look how he doesn't maintain the roads, and all sorts of complaints, and not many people actually trying to do anything about the boulder. And eventually one peasant came in with his wagon, and he really couldn't get past this boulder, so he put the wagon down, and he went and he pulled and he pulled and he used his donkey, and eventually they managed to shift this huge boulder to the side of the road. And what he found underneath the boulder was this bag of gold, and a note written on the gold that whoever managed to move this boulder, this is my reward for you. So what this man learned from this situation was every obstacle presents an opportunity to improve one's condition. So what I like the story is that sometimes we see things are difficult and challenging, and if you can go back to the Facebook page to see other lectures I've given and other stories I've told about difficulties and challenge. But we see that if we can come from this approach, could there be something in this for me? Could I be learning or growing because of this difficulty or struggle or challenge I'm finding myself in right now. So logotherapy is based on 3 principles by Dr. Viktor Frankl, and these are them. I always repeat them because they're worth knowing. So number 1 is life is unconditionally meaningful. We can find meaning anywhere. And knowing that he made the statement having gone through the concentration camps. Okay? Number 2, we have the freedom, no matter what our circumstances are, to make meaningful choices. Number 3, our strongest motivation in life is to have meaning and purpose. So we are always looking to find meaning. There's the story of 2 prisoners who were told that every day they have to push a rock from one corner to the other corner of the field. This massive, massive, massive rock. And they knew it was a meaningless exercise. It was a waste of their time, and all it was to humiliate them and to make the guards laugh. And so between the 2 of them, they decided that yes, they have to push this massive rock, and they don't have a choice about that. But where they do have the smallest bit of choice is they can make sure that there'll be no insects in the way that they will crush on the way. So this is where they did have choice. And so they were able to find meaning in what they were doing. So that's also a beautiful example about, doesn't matter how harsh the situation is, doesn't matter, and it does matter, obviously it matters how harsh the situation is, but that's not within our control. We can only respond to where we do have control. So, those are the opening points. So I named the title of today's talk is also Life is Not About the Calm, It's About the Waves. And this was a lot about what my guided imagery class was about this morning. And you're welcome to go back and listen to it. And there's a story told of this man who suffered this terrible tragedy where his child died. And he comes to speak to the rabbi and say, I'm just not coping. And the rabbi tried to explain to him that life is like being in the sea. It's exactly like this. Sometimes there's things go up, sometimes there's calm, sometimes there's huge waves, and sometimes you're sucked under. And sometimes you are struggling under the water and you can't find your breath and you can't get to the top. But eventually you will find your way to the top. And I think that this is something that can give us faith and hope to deal with the current circumstances that we're going through now, especially the lockdown, to be able to overcome what we are experiencing. So sometimes we do feel trapped, and a lot of us the whole world is actually in lockdown. And how are we experiencing that? Does it feel like we are beneath the ground, beneath the sea? We can't get up, we can't come up for air. Or where do we have choices? And how can we find that space in between the waves? There is actually a calm. So coming up to this Jewish festival that is in tomorrow night, is what we see is that the Jewish people found themselves at the border of the Red Sea. And now they didn't know where to go, what to do. Everything has been decided and done for them, and they have been taken care of from the second those plagues started. And now they hear the Egyptian army, thundering behind them. Can you imagine the fear and panic? There is no escape. And the people were divided into 4 different groups. This is a midrash that speaks about this. They were divided into 4 different groups of what should take place. So the first group said, let's just throw ourselves into the sea. We're not going to win here. There's nothing even worth trying. Let's just give up. The second group said, let's return to Egypt. Things weren't so bad there. We knew our schedule, that's how things were. And this is kind of like Stockholm syndrome, where you actually think the captors were good to you. You start having an alliance with them. So now that they've left Egypt, they start saying, let's go back to Egypt. Wasn't so bad there. Rather be in Egypt where we know we'll get food, we know we've got work, we know we have homes and shelters. Let's go back to that, right? And actually, the very word Mitzrayim can be read as Meitzarim, which means constraints. They wanted to give up this freedom that they'd been given in the desert to go back to that small box, to go back to the constraints of Egypt. That was the second group of them. The third group said, let's wage war upon the Egyptians. Let's actually fight them. And then the fourth group said, let's just pray. And actually, none of these answers was the correct answer. The answer which was the correct one was, let's move forward, right? We've left Egypt. Egypt is behind us, right? We often come to struggles and difficulties in our lives, and we want to go back there, and we spend time there, and we marinate in them, and we keep going over them. But the truth of the matter is, we get these struggles and difficulties to overcome them. And just like that man in the beginning of the story, some people complained about the boulder in the way, but he actually got up and he moved it out of the way. So this is what we are being taught by this whole dilemma of the Jewish people in their four different ways of thinking. But one person thought differently, and his name was Nachshon ben Aminadav, and he actually walked straight into the sea. He walked into the sea knowing, I'm not going back to Egypt. I'm done with Egypt. I have left that struggle and that difficulty behind me, and I am moving forward. And this is what he decided to do. And he had no clue that there would be a miracle. He didn't know. There was no music playing, right? We think you know how we see in the movies when there's something grand going to happen, right? I always think of that moment in Ice Age, you know, with that little acorn, that squirrel that's always chasing the acorn. He arrives at heaven and the gates open. It's playing that music. Oh, you've arrived, right? In the big moments in our life, there's going to be no music playing, letting us know this is a big moment for you. Here's your opportunity. Are you going to jump into the water? And that is kind of where we are right now. We're in lockdown. This is uncertainty. There are rules around us which we can do nothing about. But like Dr. Viktor Frankl says, we can find meaning anywhere and in any circumstances. And that is the time now. This is the time now for us to be introspecting and looking inwards. Well, how will I be responding to this time? So Nachshon ben Aminadav was so determined. He is moving forward. He is going straight. He had his eye on Har Sinai, where they were going to, and that was where he was going. So this sea problem in front of him was not a problem, because he had his goal set on something further. This is another principle from logotherapy that we learn, that if we can focus on the future, then we have building within ourselves a kind of a hope, something to look towards and travel towards. When we have something that we can see happening in our future, then we will get there. And this is something that helps us overcome difficulties and challenges as well. So Dr. Viktor Frankl tells a story about this man who, after the Second World War, many years later, came to see him one day to say he's a doctor, and he was in his 70s, and his wife recently died. They'd been married for many years. They'd been through many, many hardships, and his wife was the love of his life, and he was desperately, desperately lonely. He was missing her, and he was so sad, and he was getting depressed. And he came to see Dr. Frankl to try and find some meaning in this difficult life transition that he was experiencing. And Dr. Frankl said something very interesting to him. He said to him, "Tell me, what would it have been like for your wife if you would have died before she died?" And he said, "That would have been terrible. She was so dependent on me. I did everything for her. I took care of her. And I showed up for her. I don't know how. She would never have coped without me." So he said to this doctor, he said, "Can you see how being in your situation right now has actually saved her from going through what you've just described to me?" And in that moment, this man kind of straightened up, and he felt a dignity in his grief and his loss for his wife, that he had actually saved her from going through this pain. And that was the transition point for him. We had found meaning in what he was going through now. He had saved her from going through the same hard experience. So meaning can be found absolutely anywhere. It is not, it's not something that that we have to search for, but it's something that we have to think about. We have to go a little bit deeper. We have to open our horizons in how we look for it. And if we're having trouble, you're welcome to chat with me. I do private sessions with people to be able to go deeper and to find the meaning, to extract the meaning, because life is unconditionally meaningful and there is meaning in every moment. And having said that, we also have choices, how we show up and how we behave in every single moment where we're making choices. Are we making our choices from fear? Are we making our choices from boredom? Are we making our choices from gratitude? Are we behaving and reacting in a way that could be bringing something else out from us? So this is how we find the meaning. It doesn't help us to berate the government and to be irritated with the government and to lose interest and to be angry and how could they and I can't do this any longer. That doesn't help us. That's not going to help us in our own personal situation. The whole world is experiencing what we're doing. So how do we make it different for us? And what Dr. Frankl said was when he walked around in the concentration camps, he too was a prisoner with the same amount of food as everybody else. Yet he said there were people who would give up half a piece of their bread to somebody who they felt needed it more than them. How did those people wake up the next day with half their calories? And the answer is that they just did. They just did. They managed to do that, and they found it within themselves. And the actual act of that giving up of that half a piece of bread is what built up their immunity, what built up their ability to give to others and to survive. And that's what he speaks about. And this is what we have to be connecting to now. How can we connect and how can we make the choices where we do feel in control? That which we can be in control of, are we doing that correctly? And I think that's a big question. So now as we come to this time where we are arriving at the sea, they say that that our history, time doesn't move in a line this way, linear. Time actually moves in a spiritual, in a spiral this way, right? So last year at Pesach time, we were over here. We've done a whole cycle of a year, and we're back here now this year, but just rung higher. Next year, we will be another rung higher. So the truth of the matter is, we have all done Pesach before. For all the ladies out there, we've all cleaned our homes, and the gentlemen who help clean homes, we've all done this before. So why do we need it again? Because the truth of the matter is, none of us have been here at this Chag with the person who we are today. Hopefully, over the last year, and especially during this time of lockdown, COVID-19, that we are changed in some way, that we are experiencing today in a different way. And that is why we do keep experiencing. There's a cycle. We've just come from Purim, right? We're seeing all the hidden miracles, and now we're in a time where we're seeing all these open miracles. And how do these things affect me today, right? Surely, if I'm the same person last year as I was now, then what is the point of this gift of life that I've been given? Really? Same old, same old? Well, maybe when we come to the sea and the Egyptians are behind us, right? It's time to make some changes. It's time to look at, well, what did I want to leave behind in Egypt? What am I not taking with me out of this Chag, right? What have I had enough of? What personal habits or obstacles or behavior patterns or addictions or whatever do I want to be leaving behind? Because it's time to step into the sea. And that is where we are all finding ourselves. And only one man stepped into the sea, right? He had a totally different experience to everybody else who crossed on dry land. He stepped in, He walked up to his knees. Nothing happened. He walked a little bit more up to his waist. Nothing happened. But he wasn't turning back. He was so determined. He's moving forward. And he kept going until the water rose and rose up to his nose eventually. The water rose. And in that moment, he connected to this calm of, I've done my bit. I took control of what I could take control of. And he settled into that place of calm. And in that moment, the sea split, right? That was when the music, right, started to play. Because in that moment, he overcame his fear. He overcame and he left behind Egypt. He was no longer a slave anymore. And when we say slaves, it's not like any of us are slaves, right? But actually we are. We are slaves to social media. We are slaves to all of the things that distract us and rob us of our time, right? Because that is exactly what a slave is. A slave is someone who doesn't own his time. And what freedom is all about is how do we use the time that we have been given. So Nachshon walks into this water and eventually the water splits. Can you imagine the feeling he felt? Not of pride, but of, I did it. I believed, I had faith, I moved forward, I stuck with something, right? And the rest of the followers just walked in through the dry land, a total different experience to what he was going through. So sometimes we have obstacles, and we all have them. No one lives in Disneyland, and Disneyland is shut at the moment, right? No one lives in Mauritius on the beach. We all have difficulties, and what we've come to learn from this coronavirus is that it doesn't discriminate. The rich, the poor, the famous, doesn't matter what race you are, what religion you are, what age you are, everyone is vulnerable. And that is how life treats everyone as well. Everyone is vulnerable to life. So we have to learn to swim in the water. We have to learn how to gain our strength in the calm, in between the waves. We have to learn how to come up for air, right? And we have to be at that place where we are ready to be like Nachshon, of stepping into the water. So there's some questions that we can ask ourselves, right? What negative situation might I be perpetuating that I'm not willing to let go of? Because right now we are standing at the brink of the sea and we can't go in because these things are going to hold us down like rocks. No one would enter into a lake or into the sea with rocks on them. So what are you prepared to get rid of, to throw away? What is just, and what are you too afraid to get rid of? This is the time to look at these things, to ask yourself the question, what is the worst thing that could happen to me if I didn't do this anymore? If I let go of this? If I actually moved into freedom? If I took my first step into the water, into the unknown? And I'm not saying this is easy. This is hard for everyone who makes changes. It's hard because as they were saying, let's go back to Egypt because that's what we know. But the time for leaving Egypt has happened. We are not slaves anymore. We get to choose and we get to decide. And I think another big question that we can ask ourselves is, in 10 years' time, what will we regret not having done? You know, Monday moves into Tuesday and Tuesday into Wednesday, and then it's Pesach, and then, you know, it's coming the next Chag and the next Chag, and another year rolls around. Well, what about all these things we're putting off for another time? You know, if not now, when? When will be your moment when you are ready to step into that water? And that's a place and the stage where we're at right now. And so I'm hoping that these have been inspiring ideas that I've shared with you. And you are welcome to contact me. I'll just put in the chat here my email address and my my web address if anybody wants to contact me to discuss these ideas further and take them deeper into your own space. Sometimes it's very hard to see how to make changes in our own life. We need someone to help give us the support to get there. And the truth of the matter is, just like I said about this woman I spoke to this afternoon, I had a session with her. She didn't know that she could manage a needy and desperate father while her mother is sick now. And she realized that something she was struggling with from before has helped her now in this situation to cope with her dad. So we don't know why we have in the past been through difficulties or struggles, and we don't know why we're going through the particular ones now. But if we start to look, we can find meaning. So I'd love to speak with anyone who wants to ask any questions, and please give some feedback or love to engage.
If you'd like, you can unmute yourself. I just allowed everybody to unmute themselves if you have any questions or any comments for Devorah. If not, you could also leave your comments in the chat.
Thank you. So I think then just at this point is just to wish you luck and courage and the strength to dig deep and look a little bit deeper into what is life asking from me right now. You know, actually, when I went to Tony Robbins, it's a year and a half ago, his main message was, you haven't come here to make money and to make it big. You've actually come here to grow and to serve and to make your creator proud. That was his big message. So how do we use that message in a time like this? This is our time to grow. And hopefully we're all doing that. So thank you for joining me, and wishing you all a beautiful day.